Okay, everyone, can you hear me okay? That volume all right?
I don't hear the speaker.
You don't? You can turn it up a little bit there.
Yeah, we could hear you, but not through this.
No? Testing, testing, there you go, okay. Is that all right then? Okay, welcome to 2026 Nature Nanaimo, our first monthly meeting of the year. I'm Doug Fraser. Great to see you all here. And this is another meeting that we're really co-hosting, but me badly hosting with Nalt. But Nalt is super supportive and gets the word out well and does nicer posters than me. And anyways, I see Linda back there. But anyway, so to all the Nalt people, all the Nature Nanaimo people, all the newbies and all those people on Zoom, it's great to see you. And thanks for coming out. We have an exciting evening ahead. So without further ado, we begin by acknowledging that we are on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the traditional territories of the Nanaimo and Stoneham First Nations, and a beautiful place to be here and a privilege to be in this beautiful spot. And our mission, as always, is to foster an interest, appreciation, and enjoyment of nature and promote the conservation of healthy natural ecosystems in the Nanaimo region. And for some reason, I have the tile bar across the bottom. I don't know. You'll just have to see. There's some interesting apps down there. And we try to maintain a pretty good presence online. We have our website, naturenanaimo.ca, and of course, Nalt has a phenomenal online presence there. You can just Google Nalt and have all kinds of things come up. But we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we have a YouTube channel that I encourage people to subscribe to, and we have an email address, a bunch of them, but the info@naturenanaimo.ca is the main one. Upcoming events. So next week, Wednesday, I guess, a week from Wednesday, we are going to the Hamilton Marsh and the French Creek Estuary Nature Preserve, I think it's called. We'll do one before and one after lunch. There's actually a pretty good group of us. I think we're sort of 25 plus people, maybe, if everyone shows up. But we have two leaders, Lynn and Kari, and I think they're going to split us in two, because otherwise we're going to cap us at 20. So half of us are going to walk out with like Lynn and get her words of wisdom, walking out to Hamilton Marsh, and then walk back with Carrie and get the other words of wisdom. So our group size won't be too huge. So we're going to go to Hamilton Marsh before lunch, then we have lunch in Qualicum Beach, and then we're going to do a quick visit to the French Creek Conservation Area, and a little bit more about that in a second. But then on February 4th, we're just going to have what we call a ramble, just a little walk around Buttercups looking for winter birds, see what's out there. So that's 2 weeks-ish now. Our next meeting is going to be on snorkeling in the Vancouver Island area by Sarah Elliston, and that'll be great. She has a book out on snorkeling in this area, and we have spectacular marine ecosystem biodiversity around Vancouver Island. So very worthwhile to get your head under the water there. And on February 20th, Sinjin is going to be leading us on, we're just calling it a day on Gabriola. We're going to go to Malspina Galleries there, the weird sculpted sandstony kind of areas. There's a big cedar tree trail there. I forget what it's called, the name of the trail. I'm going to go to the museum. There's a really nice little museum there. And then have lunch somewhere. And anyways, putter around. So there's Sarah, just so you know, the heads up for the next meeting. She does amazing underwater photography. For an astrophysicist, that's not bad. Really, she studies galaxies and stuff like that. But she still takes pretty good pictures of sea stars and stuff like that. So the Hamilton Marsh isn't just a nice outing. The Hamilton Marsh is one of the biggest marshes in our immediate regions, wetlands, they're very, very precious wetlands, right? Really, really important biologically. And there has been a tentative purchase agreement made between the R&D, are we RDN? Whatever, and what's the name of the lumber? Sorry? Is it the Mosaic or
It says on the street, Mosaic Forest.
Oh, oh, yeah, I just, okay. Anyways, so there's a tentative agreement to purchase it. And that's all going through very nicely. And NALT is one of the organizations that's agreed to contribute $250,000 towards this purchase. And so the fundraising for that ends on the at the end of the month. And so we're hoping to get some members. If you haven't already, it would be nice to donate towards the purchase of this marsh. Right now, up until the 25th of January, there's a matching donation thing. So if you get a donation in sort of quickly, then it'll be doubled. And then that's up to the 25th, and then you can still, I mean, Nalt, you've done a really good job. You're getting pretty close, eh? But we're also close time-wise. And, oops. So the fundraising ends though on January 30th is my understanding. So anyways, good thing to do. You can come out and enjoy the place, but you can donate even if you can't attend. Then some future other major events that we we'll inform you about them, whether or not we arrange a Nature Nanaimo thing. But these 4 major events that are coming up in the spring, and we've attended some of them in the past, well, all 3 out of 4, but there's the Hornby Island Herring Festival, which is coming up. There's the Pacific Rim Whale Festival, which we haven't participated in before. So I think this year we're going to kind of see what they're doing and see if we can arrange a one night over on the Ucluelet Tofino area there to participate in this whale festival. So who wouldn't like to be in a whale festival? Then there's the Brant Festival, and that's the Brant Geese. They have a lot of different activities. Last year we went to Deep Bay. They had an open house at the marine station there, research station, and then saw the Brant Geese on the way back. And then there's the Tofino Shorebird Festival, which is the very end of April, early May, and there's lots of shorebirds over on the mudflats and sandy beaches over there, and some brilliant birders that you just go and are in awe of the birders as much as the birds. But except for Hornby, all 3 of those festivals haven't said exactly what they're doing on what days yet. So I'm waiting to find out when particular events will be to know exactly when, what to offer and organize for us. Oh yeah, and so I had those out of order, but so now's the time. There is this for the Nault Hamilton Marsh donation. January 30th is the deadline. And another item Mark White just brought to my attention. Nature Nanaimo has been putting in short little articles in the Nanaimo magazine, Voyager magazine, and there's some samples at the back of the most recent publication. And what's the article in that one about?
It's wetlands.
Oh, that's the wetlands, wetlands article. It's been really great. There's like 15,000 copies a month or something go out. And so if you haven't seen that magazine, we have an article in there every single month now. And it's just a nice bit of information that we share there and outreach to the public.
If I may, the February issue will be Pacific Herring.
Oh, okay, yeah, February issue.
In conjunction with the Herring Festival.
Yeah, right. So that the articles try to, if timing is suitable, to try and time the article to match what's happening. So the February issue has an article about the herring just before they spawn, and it's kind of an important conservation topic there as well. So without further ado, I'm just gonna turn it over to Stefan to introduce our speaker, Megan. Oh, I missed this.
Okay, so my name is Stefan Lindgren, so
Oh.
I used to be part of the board, but I'm no longer, I've been relegated to the membership category. So just before I introduce Megan, just to note that if you missed it, we have a raffle, $2 a ticket, that you can go back to the back table, and it's for a book about owls. So it's a book that's called What an Owl Knows. And it's brand new, so you're getting a hell of a deal if you can get your hands on that thing. And it's a good book. Megan has confirmed that as well, so she works with owls. I also just wanted to mention that there's about Hamilton Marsh, there's more information on the back table, or you can talk to Linda, who knows all the ins and outs of that. But anyway, what you aim for is now here, and we're lucky to have Megan Boers talk to us about Western Screech Owl. And Megan kindly offered to do this, and soon Linda at Nault. So I got sort of a free contact to organize a speaker, which was really good. So anyway, without further ado, I'll let Megan talk more about what she does for a living.
And does that, will that advance for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
You want to use this on?
I forgot my fancy clip.
Oh, and just the Zoom people can only see you through the
Oh,
little
I see.
camera.
Hello.
And hear you through the little microphone there.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for turning out. This is amazing to see so many faces. So my name is Megan Boers. I've been working with owls for the past, well, I'd say about 8 years, maybe 6 years. Mostly work with northern saw-whet owls, which you see in the photo, the advertisement photo. That's actually a northern saw-whet owl, not the owl that I'm going to be talking about today. It's the smallest, one of the smallest owls that we have in Canada. It's also the cutest, I think. And you know, I do love screech owls, but saw-whets are quite cute. I've also worked with burrowing owls, and I've worked across Canada kind of on various conservation-led projects. I did my master's, which I'll talk about a little bit here, on the interior subspecies of Western screech owls. And now I'm transitioning to a PhD on the coastal subspecies of Western screech owls. I know, very varied in my research. So yeah, I guess I'll get started. Basically, I'm just going to walk you through all the things that I know about screech owls, and feel free to stop me at any point and ask questions. I like it when it's interactive, so if you have questions, just let me know. So I'd first like to thank, you know, obviously all of this work is conducted on the unceded and ancestral homeland of many nations. The Howsett Nation is some of the coastal work that I did on Vancouver Island, which is up in the Clayoquot Sound region. Oh, pressed it too soon. And the Siouxsie, and then we're obviously here on the Nanaimo, and this I think is from a previous talk, so my bad. So Western screech owls are resident, monogamous, they are threatened, they are nocturnal, forest obligate, meaning that they nest in cavities, they nest in old cavities, so whether it's naturally formed cavity or a woodpecker excavated cavity, they need trees in order to breed. There are very few cases where they've bred in rock crevices, but that's like extremely rare. So they're very in need of trees and perches to be able to hunt and forage. And they are threatened. So there has been, you know, obviously a lot of landscape change over the past. And so their numbers have been kind of steadily declining over the past 50 and probably more extremely in the last 30 years. And they're dietary generalists, which means they can eat pretty much anything: fish, worms, small mammals. You know, we think of owls as, you know, small mammal, but there's lots of owls that eat lots of insects. It's a great, source of protein. So yeah. There's two subspecies, as I was mentioning, of Western screech owls. Actually, there's multiple, but in Canada, we have two subspecies of Western screech owls. We've got MK McFarlanei, which this doesn't actually do anything on the screen, but you can see it goes up just a little bit into the southern portion, kind of like west of the coastal mountain range in BC. And then MK Kanakadii goes all the way up the coast of Alaska. So as I mentioned, they nest in a variety of different crevices. I don't know if you can actually see where the screech owl is. It's actually a pretty good screen, so sometimes you can't, it's hard to see, but they are very well camouflaged. Like their plumage does a really good job of making them seem, invisible. They usually produce between 1 and 7 chicks or eggs, but the range is mostly 2 to 5. I haven't ever had a nest of 1, and I haven't had anything past 5. So I think the majority is in that 2 to 5 range, and we call the young altricial, which just means that they need their parents for the first 26 days before they can, fledge. They can't, kind of helpless. They're little ping pong, ball-sized things. Then they get a little bit bigger like these guys and start to beg for food at the cavity opening. So they leave the nest after about 35 to 40 days after hatching from their egg, but they actually stick around the adult for close to 1.5 to 2 months. And during that time, they will follow around the adult and beg for food and really bother, both of the parents and roost together like these guys. So as I mentioned, I did my master's in the Okanagan Valley on the interior subspecies of Western screech owl. And I was interested in whether climate change or extreme temperatures that we had in BC. I was starting my master's in 2021. So it was right after that big heat event. I was like, what are the screech owls doing? Are they okay during all this, extremely hot temperatures? And so I wanted to compare, because they nest often, at least in the interior, it's a little bit different here, but they nest in very mature cottonwood kind of dominated riparian systems. I wanted to see that whether those forests functioned as kind of refugia or thermal refugia, which means they get less extremely hot as the surrounding like ponderosa pine landscape. And so I collected a bunch of data, which includes picking pellets off the ground, which are just fancy word for owl vomit. I had other people tease apart the owl vomit. I've done my own owl vomit, so I've, outsourced some of that. As you see there, pellets are very good at keeping, not soft-bodied, like things like mammals or birds, they'll stick in pellets pretty well, but soft-bodied organisms like a frog or a fish probably won't show up in a pellet as readily. So sometimes this can be considered quite biased because, we're only really accounting for part of the diet. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's one of the methods that you can get at diet for owls and a lot of raptors. And then we did a lot of nest monitoring. So we put up camera traps at the nests to see, if they would bring different food in. Unfortunately, owls move really quickly and they're very well insulated. And so camera traps, which are built for mammals that work off, heat, it's not great. It doesn't catch them super well, especially when they're going super fast into the cavity. We also tagged them, so we put little trackers on them and followed them around so that we could find the nests and find them roosting in the trees. And we also monitored them with thermal gear. So we use a thermal monocular. Yeah, I know it looks really scary. He's not. To monitor the owls and be able to keep our headlamps off so that we can watch the owls doing their natural behaviors without any, change in behavior from us from our light. So I was looking at whether, temperature, like extreme temperature, I'll try and keep the graphs to a minimum. I just nerd out over these things. I wanted to see whether temperature would affect how often they fed their chicks. And it turns out that they do, past about that 30-degree mark, they start to kind of drop off on how often they're feeding their chicks. And that's likely due to the fact that it's very hot out and they probably don't want to expend a whole lot of energy. There probably needs to be more research done on the actual energetics, and some physiology people who are better at those things can go investigate that. But from an ecological perspective, it's important to consider that climate change does have an impact, just like us. When we get hot, we don't want to do stuff. They also get hot and don't want to do stuff. We also found, and this is my favorite part, they fish, and they fish very well. This particular female brought in 12 fish within 10 days, all around the same size. You can see the chick there with a juicy, I believe they're some kind of salmonids, brook trout or something like that. And what we found was they were eating these disproportionately when it was dry out. Now, whether they went to the streams, just to drink water and then were catching, I don't know, or they were just thirsty and maybe you wanted juicy fish when you're really thirsty. This is based off very little data, so it'd be great if someone could go do more of this research and see how valid that is throughout. But it makes sense, like ecologically, if you're thirsty, you want to eat the things that have lots of water in it, right? And so the other part of climate change is obviously increasing wildfire. So I was doing my master's while this wildfire was going through the Okanagan, and I unfortunately had one immature owl that was tagged in the fire, and unfortunately it didn't make it. But it's a good reminder that these effects impact everything. And this little guy ended up in the New York Times story. So, he got the message out. Very sad, but, at least there's some silver lining there. And so one of the biggest things that I learned during my master, and why I do all of these talks and I'm blathering at you today, is that science is collaborative. And so I find every time I go to these talks, people have something that they can share with me, or I can share with them, about science or how to conduct science. And so, yeah, that was a really big part of my master's, was learning that, it takes a village essentially to get any kind of degree done in this field. So then I moved to Vancouver Island and I fell in love all over again with the same species, different subspecies. But we really know very little about the coastal subspecies. The interior subspecies, they're nice. They like to nest in nest boxes. They're quite, you see them in parks. The coastal subspecies, not so much. They're a little bit more cryptic. They don't like to be around people quite as much. And so what do I want to know for my master's, PhD? Mostly I want to know why they would nest here versus here, or vice versa, and what kind of land they need in order to persist, right, for their conservation. I want to know how much area they need, what the adjacent area needs to look like. Maybe they're okay foraging in second growth, maybe they're not. Kind of understanding those habitat dynamics that they need on the landscape. That's what I'm really interested and focused on for my PhD. So I last year, I guess now, since it's 2026, decided to test a few field equipment. Sorry, it's thirsty business. So I decided to do a pilot on the west coast of Vancouver Island, on Vargas Island. If anyone's been to Tofino, it's the one that you can see with all the wolves. And so Vargas Island is mostly park, all old growth, lots of little coastal bogs and coastal areas. And when I first got there, I was like, great, we'll go to that side and there's a nice long trail I can use for like trapping and doing all my field research. This is fantastic. And it's dominated by these coastal bogs, lots of yellow cedar, shore pine, no owls. I shouldn't say no owls. There were saw-whet owls. There were a lot of saw-whet owls, not screech owls. So we relocated to Racier Point. And this was dominated by lots of really old growth, mixed forest, very productive. There was still some bog kind of more centrally, but overall it kind of looked like this. And owls, thankfully. So essentially what I wanted to do was we're also interested in looking at the vocal activity of these owls and where that is in relation to space. Because all owls kind of defend their territory, but they might be more vocal right by their nest or in their core range versus the entire place where they're looking for food. But that's just a theory, we don't know. So we set out to put a bunch of acoustic or autonomous recording units, which are essentially, acoustic recorders that will record throughout the entire evening. And hopefully with a tagged owl, like within that territory, we'll be able to tell how much they were really using with the tag and compare that to how much vocally they were using. So we ran into one major problem when I started on the other side of the island. This is what the interior forests look like. This is what the coastal forests look like. These pictures are kind of misleading, but the coastal forests, the understory was like taller than I was. And my nets were only 10 feet tall. So you can do the math. The owls just were flying over, zipping every which way. And it was like, okay, great. I guess I'll never catch you. So we had to come up. There's a picture there, there's the net, and there's the vegetation everywhere. So really hard to catch an owl if it's, in a tree 20 feet up in the air. So we had to come up with a canopy net, essentially, on painter poles that we could push up into the canopy to allow us to capture these owls. And it took a bit of MacGyvering, but we got it to work really well, and we came up with a really nice setup. And bam, we're finally got some owls. So we ended up tagging 2 owls. We captured 4, so 2 male, 2 female, and we believe they're a pair. This guy's Sam, that guy's Pippin. And we found that they're using pretty large tracts of old growth, potentially larger than we maybe had thought, about 100 hectares. And so you can see that they're using, with this data, you can see they're using that kind of habit, the coastal kind of islets that they're going on to forage. They might be eating things like crabs or other crustaceans or invertebrates when the tide is low. And they're also foraging a lot within the, the more boggy stuff. So salamanders or what have you. We don't know that for sure, but that's what's in there. The other thing that I noticed when I had the birds actually in hand and was able to take measurements was how much smaller the coastal subspecies was from the interior. Now, of course, this is only based on Vargas Island birds, so it might be that, overall coastal birds aren't that much smaller. It's just for whatever reason, Vargas has like really small screech owls, but I think likely this trend will hold across the coastal region. So we did tip to nares, which is just, the end of the nostril to the tip. And you have the coastal western screech owl, which we dub Wisoki, and then the interior, which is Wisomac for McFarland's and Kennecott's. And so you can see there's also the dichotomy of the females being larger than the males typically. For at least the interior birds, they're about 75% of the female, so the female is about 25% bigger than the male. And the wing cord as well. So pretty much on all fronts, they were smaller. They also have very different coloring. The coastal birds are a lot more chocolate, which kind of goes with a lot of the birds that we have on the coast. They're very kind of dark coloring. That might be, and this is just a theory, but the melanin in the feathers is harder to break down. So it might be that those feathers might be more durable. They might eat different foods. Like I said, the interior subspecies, when I was studying them, really great at fishing. Some interesting things in the diet as well. Coastal, maybe they eat lots of, we would find routinely, you know, lance tooth snails under roost sites. Obviously they're eating some small mammal. So hopefully we'll get more information as I go through the PhD process on what they're eating. We'll report back, kind of in the intermediate stage of doing all of this. So they're fundamentally different birds. I know I'm studying the same species, you know, across what will be 7 years. But to me, they're different birds. They do different things. One's very cryptic, one's cryptic, but less so. Yeah. So what can we do about, you know, what can you do about Western screech owl conservation? Might not be able to do, you know, whole lots about large swaths of, you know, land management. But what you can do is you can make individual changes in your backyard. Planting native plants. Wherever possible, you can plant native plants and leave dead standing trees, put up nest boxes. But really planting heterogeneity, like leaving logs on the ground, things for small mammal or insects to use, actually brings in a lot of other wildlife. And so you can see, again, cryptic. I don't know if you can see.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, just blends in. They're very good at blending in. So yeah, I'm starting my PhD this fall, although I'm also still doing, you know, field work before that this fall. And that's my main question, is looking at these old growth systems and how do they compare to these managed systems, and not in a, you know, don't cut any forest down, just manage it in a way that it allows screech owls enough space and the space that they need to persist within these landscapes. And the other thing that I want to look at is health of the population and compare that from old growth to, you know, managed ecosystems, because gut microbiomes, I don't know if anyone here is familiar with the book, Ed Young's I Contain Multitudes. It's technically about the human gut microbiota, but surprisingly, there's been a lot of research recently on how much that affects your behavior. So like sugar cravings, for example, that is all done by microbes in your gut. And so we're just only tapping the surface of like what you can do and what you can figure out with gut microbiota, and that includes like the fungi, bacteria, pathogens, like everything that's found in wildlife's gut also impacts their health and their ability to, you know, fend off diseases, for example.
So I have a question to the previous, so they have totally hairy legs. And
Yes, oh yeah,
they
that's
have fingers.
yes, that's technically a sawwhat owl. I kind of cheated. But they do both have, I should actually, it's a good point. I have a better photo of screech owls' feet, and they're like red. But yes, they have feathers all the way up. A lot of that is to damp sound, right? If you're really fluffy. And the other thing is feathers on owls have like special barbs that allow them to be just like super silent. I don't know if anyone's watched those videos
Yes,
of
when
like,
they fly, you can't hear.
yeah, it's just like absorbing
Like a
sound.
ghost.
Yeah, not like ravens or, you know, vultures or any of those loud flyers. So yeah, like there's been some really good recent research. Again, this is a very new field of research, but looking at how native ecosystem gut microbiota compare to, you know, managed or altered, or even just more disturbed landscapes. Like you think of areas that get high disturbance, like the interior fires or what have you. And so that's kind of one of the areas for my PhD that I'm going to try and look at, not just the space use, but then how does that gut microbiota change with that space use. And so, yeah, I kind of ran through these slides quickly, but then sometimes people have lots of questions. And so I want to hear from you. This is a QR code. It will link you to an Instagram page that I started to kind of share information about the project as I go along, but it's also a place for you to provide feedback, or if you would like me to talk at a different venue. I do like talking about screech owls. Yeah, does anyone have any questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
When you were in Okanagan, did you notice that they eat snakes also? There is lots
Mhm.
of rattlesnakes there.
Yeah, there's a lot of snakes. Oh, sorry.
If you can repeat the question.
Oh, repeat the question. Yes. Yes. Question asked was, did the screech owls in the interior eat a lot of snakes, as there's a lot of snakes in the interior? And yes, I have had, it's funny, most of the cameras didn't work when we were doing like, aside from that one fish camera. Most of them didn't get anything, but one day, actually the picture with all the chicks that I was showing earlier, there was just a really long snake that like was for whatever reason like left out of the cavity just for for a while. It was sitting there, just a dead snake that they dropped in, and they were like, okay, well, I'll eat it when I eat it, I guess. So yes, they do eat snakes. I don't think it's super often. I am curious about how often they eat, like they actually eat fish, because there was a study published on fish in California in 2013, where they put these like kind of enclosures of trout in rivers, in different river systems. And so they could look at the predation rates of different predators and figure out what was eating the fish. And so, can anyone guess what the top avian predator was for fish?
Osprey.
It was pretty good. Yeah, osprey.
Osprey.
It's not osprey.
Well, pelican.
It was belted kingfisher. But do you know what the second was?
Oh,
Yeah, western screech owls. And
Wow.
that was above, things like merganser or great blue heron, which we typically think of as, pestivorous. So yeah, that's just like another tidbit. I've been finding tidbits here and there of, megascops doing a lot of fishing. And so that's kind of something that I'm trying to figure out. Yeah, great question. Sorry, I kind of rambled there.
It means they also hunt during the day.
Yes, they can hunt during the day, especially when they have, when the chicks are at about 16 days, they start to thermoregulate more themselves, and they get really hungry. So after 16 days, it's like they really have to feed the chicks really often. And so they'll often hunt during the day and kind of extend into the day. Yeah. Great question.
How separated are the subspecies populations? Like, are there intergrade zones or anything along those lines?
Great question. The question was, how integrated are the two subspecies? Is there a hybrid zone? Yes. There's a bunch of research happening currently. I'm actually driving after this down to Victoria to go to a Western screech owl specific working group where they're going to talk about some of that. In short, yes, there's kind of a zone within the Lillooet region, kind of going up, extending up, and that has some intergrades, but there's a pretty clear distinction between the two subspecies. There's also, I think 9, don't quote me, there's like 9 other subspecies in kind of the southern states, Arizona and stuff. And it's funny because across their entire range, they have very different dietary needs. So like in Arizona, they're very insectivorous, whereas here they're a lot bigger, and they're a lot bigger than they are down there. Yeah, sorry, I kind of veered off topic. Not very good at sticking on. Sorry, you?
What's their relationship or the dynamics with other owl species in particular? I'm thinking I've heard people say that as barred owl abundance increases, it has negative impact.
Great question. So the question was, what are their interactions with other species of owls, particularly with barred owls, because, you know, as they've increased, there's been more pressure put on western screech owls or other small owls because they are quite nasty. Barred owls are great, but I have worked with you know, at banding stations where they do northern saw-whet banding, and the barred owls will come and they'll just yeah, they'll go after pretty much everything that moves. Kind of like cats in that way. But yeah, in terms of their pressures, they do overlap. We don't know exactly the amount of predation that the barred is really hard to test those things. But we're hopeful that these new array studies will be able to link, you know, where the barred owl is and where, you know, the screech owls is, if they're avoiding each other and able to forage in different spaces, or if it's kind of like one is suppressing the other. We do know that they call less for sure in areas where there's barred owls. Whether that translates to they're not actually there or breeding is also really hard to tell because they're so cryptic and they don't actually, you know, if they're not vocalizing, it's like, how would you know that they're not there if they're just quiet? But yes, that is something that's very concerning. The big thing is that barred owls are very opportunistic, and so they're really, I mean, you see them, like I've seen them downtown in like the west end of Vancouver. Like they're very adaptive birds. So yeah, it is a concern. I think most of that can be traced to kind of the habitat. I don't know how well barred owls do in like real dense old growth. I've had them in those spaces, but it might be that there's just like so much food abundance that they can overlap and it's not a big deal. So it's kind of like, you know, whether it's only the barred owl or it's the barred owl and everything else kind of in tandem. I have had, in terms of like other species in the interior, I've had great horned owls take out usually young, immature, kind of not the best flighted owls. And so great horns will take out western screech owls, but they're used to each other. So I think it's like at a rate that is marginally negligible. I think a lot of it has to do with bottom up instead of top down. Like we like in ecology and in general, we're very focused on top down ecology, like controlling wolves, controlling bards, controlling things that are up. When in reality, if you have enough food, everything's good, right? More or less, right? So great question. Sorry, I like to ramble. Any other questions?
When you said there was a hybrid region, does that imply that they interbreed or not just overlap? And how
We
do
don't-
you tell which species the owl belongs to?
Great question. The question was, during the, or within the kind of hybrid region, do they interbreed with each other? Yes, likely, because they are the same species, so they're not different species. But we don't know the degree, I don't think. I do know that Dr. Darren Irwin has, at the University of British Columbia, Vancouver, has done some work on that. And I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with that. I haven't found that work. So I don't know. It's also really hard to get samples from screech owls. You have to catch them. And as I said, I spent like 2 months trying to catch 4 of them. So it's very difficult. So if you're trying to like map the whole genome, yeah, it's a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing to do, but I imagine that they interbreed just because they are the same species, and I don't think that there's going to be that much difference within the birds that are in those habitats and kind of that intergrade zone. Yeah, great question. Any other questions?
So other than like predation from like barred owls and stuff, what has really led to them being threatened?
I think it's large scale land change, like a lot of development, you know, habitat that was there that isn't there anymore. raptors are usually indicators that the prey base is suffering. So, a lot of studies in Europe have, done long-term studies where either they've reclamated places and habitats there after, then they have a lot more raptors come back. And so I think for screech owls, it's difficult to pin it on one specific thing. Like it's easy for us to say it's barred owls, because that's, a really easy explanation. But in reality, it's probably the fact that the landscape's degraded. Now they have barred owls. Now they have this. And so it's just one on top of the other. I also don't know how much they're affected by just human presence. Like in the interior, I have had, screech owls nesting, maybe 2 meters off someone's deck. I'm sure that happens here as well. But yeah, there just isn't the habitat, I don't think, as much for them. Yeah.
Do you happen to have a recording of their?
I don't. I did this last time too, and I messed up. I can play a call for you. It sounds kind of like a ping pong ball. It's very unique. I like to think of it as like running water. Often when I'm near creeks, like sometimes I have to really strain to see if it's the water that I'm hearing or a screech owl that I'm hearing. And that might be intentional, right? Like acoustic masking is when, species they want to hear each other, but they don't want to get heard by, for example, a barred owl or a great horn. Then they can mask kind of in other sounds. It's been done with some, I think, wading birds and frogs as well. Let me see here. Let's do that one. Can you hear that? So that's more or less, a male call, and they will duet with each other. So during the breeding season, the female and the male will get together and, go back and forth. And she's a little bit higher pitched than him. And yeah, so.
And breeding season is now? I mean, no, mating season.
Mating season, yeah, breeding season. So the question is, when is breeding season? And they start to get interested now, but they probably won't start in earnest until like the end of February, and then they start to lay their eggs. April, chicks kind of happen in March, and then typically they fledge in June. There's a little bit variability between like the interior subspecies and the coastal, but I actually found the birds on Vargas were starting later than I had thought that they would compared to the birds in the interior. So I think there's a lot of regional differences, but more or less kind of that March through June period is their real go time.
Would you know if they come back to the same cavity to nest?
Yes. So the question is whether they come back to the same cavity to nest. And yes, they do. More so, I think, in the interior. Don't quote me on that. But they have been known to reuse the same nest box or the same nest natural cavity over and over again, especially if nothing happened last year and it was a good spot to be, then they'll stay. I have had it though where this happens particularly with aspen, where they'll have a cavity, and I don't know whether it's they're bringing all kinds of rotting stuff into the cavity and it makes it all kind of moist or something. But often after the chicks have left the nest, the aspen will just like break at the point where the nest was. Yeah. I've had it happen 3 times, which is surprising because there was only like 29 nests in my master's. So I'm like, I feel like that's pretty decent.
Does the male stay and help raise the young ones?
Yes, he does. The question was, does the male stay and raise the family? And yes, he will be more or less the only provider for the female and the chicks up until the point where she can leave. So that first 16-day period where, you know, the chicks aren't thermally independent, so they still need their mother to kind of sit on them. He's going hard. And then as soon as they can, you know, they're fluffy enough and they've got a little bit of down and they can thermoregulate, the female goes off. Sometimes she'll leave for a while because she's been sitting on the nest so long. She's like, I don't want to deal with this. And then she comes back. But often, yeah, it's a lot to do with the male. So being a very good hunter as a male screech owl is very important. Yeah.
Do they, what happens after they've mated and had their breeding season? Do they separate or do they stay together?
That's a great question. The question was, after they mate, do they stay together or separate? So since they're resident, they will occupy the territory and defend the territory together, but often in the winter, because resources are more scarce, they'll kind of go to opposite sides of their territories. There's work done in the interior in the Shuswap quite a while back that was looking at kind of those space use dynamics. But yeah, we don't know. For the coastal birds, we don't know how much they do that, but it makes sense that you wouldn't want to be right on top of each other, you know, like that's my small mammal, like get off it. Yeah, it makes sense that they always come back though, typically. They, you know, like to mate with the same, you know, the same person. Owl. Yeah, sorry. It's late.
How long do they live, like without predation or disease?
That's a great question. The question was, how long do they live? So I think the reports that I've read have said somewhere around 2 to 3 years in the wild. I think it's probably a lot longer than that. It's just really hard to do longevity studies on them. Like other species like northern saw-whet owls, you can actually age via the wing molt, so you can see, because they do an incomplete molt, so you can at least tell like 4 or 5 years old or older than that. Whereas screech owls, they do a complete molt every year, so they look like they went through the washing machine. At the end of the breeding season, they're just like, I want everything new, which makes it really hard to age them unless you're doing like genetic aging. And because they're so cryptic and we rarely do these kinds of studies where we're trapping them, it's kind of hard to know that you have the same bird or not. There is some work being done in the interior currently that is using special tags specifically for that purpose to get at how long they live in the wild and whether they maintain those territories. Because the other thing is we don't know if, you know, the territory becomes meh if they leave or if they just keep trying in that territory. Great question.
Owls found pretty much all over the world.
Great question. It was whether owls are found all over the world, except for Antarctica, more or less. Yeah. There's several different groups of strigiformes is kind of like the overarching branch. There's also barn owls are their kind of own out group. They're kind of aliens. Yeah, we have in Canada, I think 16 species of owls. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, there's 22 species of megascops, which is this species, most of which are in South America. So lots of species diversity in South America, and any tropical place you'll get lots. But yeah, they're very good at, it's just like think of any bird of prey, like kites or buzzards or what have you. They're just the nocturnal version of that. So
Say in the jungle.
oh yeah, there are lots in the jungle, tons in the jungle. Yeah. Yeah, and they're all on different, they all, you know, occupy different niches, different micro, you know, niches.
But not say in a desert, right?
No, you get them in the desert too. Arizona, they have elf owls and western screech owls, and whiskered screech owls, I think, that nest in saguaro cactuses. So they'll basically, yeah, they're really good at taking up different spaces. Except for maybe not the open pelagic ocean. There's no owls out there that I know of.
Species.
That is a great question. The question was, when did the group come on the scene? I don't know the answer to that question, so that is a good one. I'll have to look that up. Evolutionarily, they're quite old. I know there was a paper done in 2019 that kind of split a bunch of the different raptor groups. And I can't remember whether owls are older than diurnal raptors. I think they might be. But yeah, they've been like birds in general. That's you should put in to win that book, What an Owl Knows, because I know that they discuss it in there. I just can't remember. But they like most birds, they're quite old. They're basically like all birds are pretty much just dinosaurs that got smaller. So. No worries, thanks.
Just wondering I know the saw-whets, they play calls to bring them into the mist nets.
Yes.
Do you do that for the screech owls too?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
The question was, do we use call playback to bring in the owls for trapping? And yes, we do. Usually different things work for different owls. The hardest owls to catch are males who ironically are trying to lure a female because they don't want to chase the female. They want to like bring the female to the nest cavity so he can show off his real estate. And so I've had so many nights where I'm like trying various calls and the male is like, no, I want you to follow me. You have to come with me. I was like, okay, I give up. And then when they're breeding, they're a lot more territorial. So often females are a lot easier to catch because they're more aggressive. And they will just go right into the net. I had a female once. I was trying to catch the male because I don't like particularly putting tags on females just so it doesn't, bother them. I feel like it would be uncomfortable in a cavity. But I caught her 3 times and I had to keep letting her go. And then I just gave up because like she was the only one I ever caught. She just really hated she just hated me. Yeah, great question.
What was your inspiration for studying this specific group of birds?
Great question. What was the inspiration for studying this group of birds? I really liked owls when I was a kid. I lived in Enderby, kind of by Garden Lake area in the wilderness, and was very fortunate to have things like saw-whets around and northern pygmy owls. And I got very quickly into birds of prey because they seemed really cool, kind of like predatory owl. And then when I got to researching screech owls, I realized like how special they are and how cryptic and yeah, they're just sneaky and they surprise you. Like when I was doing my master's, I didn't anticipate that they'd be fishing all the time, and then totally changed the way that I look at the way they, use space. I'm like, oh, are they flying up and down these rivers to their favorite fishing holes? I don't know. So yeah, I really enjoyed the variety that, studying something that's difficult to study, especially nocturnal species, which, we forget that as humans, we're very vision focused and also very day focused. So most of the scientific literature you'll see is focused on large mammals, predators, and diurnal species, so things that are active in the daytime. Nocturnal species, difficult to study. You have to stay up late at night. In the wilderness, it's not safe, So yeah, there's adventure in that.
So would they be integral to our environment because they control the insect population, or?
Yeah,
what
they're
makes them special in our whole system?
That's a great question. Why are Western screech owls integral to the whole system? Well, I like to think of Western screech owls as kind of canary in a coal mine in that they're generalists, right? So I said they're eating snakes, they're eating worms, they're eating pretty much everything. So if they're declining and they're able to eat everything, then something must be happening. But they're also just, they're great rodent control. They're great, ecosystem, indicators and Yeah, they do a lot, top-down, predation in the ecosystem and move around, if they're like we like to think of, eagles as bringing all that nitrogen from those creeks, into the forests. Screech owls might be doing that too. We don't know. So,
Trout.
yeah, trout.
When you were in Okanagan, were you able to see how burrowing owls are doing there?
Yeah.
Also in the club.
That's a great question. The question was, when I was in the interior, how did I see the burrowing owl populations in the interior doing? I see Leah McKinnon on the online Zoom. She actually studies burrowing owls, so I feel like if I say something wrong, she's gonna know. But yeah, interior population or burrowing owl generally has been declining kind of throughout their range. There's a bunch of different reasons that they think why they might be declining. But the Burrowing Owl Conservation Society in BC has been doing a great job of doing reintroductions and putting in, burrows, artificial burrows that they use to like study and release, captive bred. And I think that program has been fairly successful and they have had returns. But yeah, it's kind of like everything. The grasslands aren't quite what they were in BC, and so those species are also declining. They're primarily insectivorous. They eat the odd mouse and other vertebrate, but insects aren't doing well either. So yeah, but they are very cute. There's nothing cuter than a baby burrowing owl, I would say. It's right up there. Yeah, sorry, in the back.
Since you said there's wolves on Vargas Island,
Mhm.
I was wondering if you had any interesting encounters.
Great question. The question was, since I mentioned that there were wolves on Vargas Island, did I have any fun encounters? I did. I ran into wolves 10 times, I think. We were camping out there for like a week at a time, and so lots of opportunity. They were usually pretty good at just, like minding their own business and not coming too close. Although I did have one very sneaky boy or girl, actually, I don't know, I'm not a carnivore person, who came up and was very interested in our lunch. And so I had to chase him off. But otherwise, yeah, they were pretty good. We saw them often like swimming from, islet to islet, which is always very special. Yeah.
Cool. There's one online question.
Oh, great.
She's going to email you with specifics, but could you maybe just say something generally about nest boxes and owl nest boxes? Is
Yeah.
it something people should be putting up?
Yeah, owl boxes are great. They're great for, a lot of other cavity. They provide, heterogeneity and, just structure in the forest, right? And we're missing a lot of those decaying trees. And so nest boxes are one of the ways that you can, provide that extra space for owls, but also just if you could leave, if the dead standing tree isn't doing anything, it isn't a risk to anyone, it's great to leave that because it's also great for bats and woodpeckers and all the other stuff. So,
Cool.
Was there a question specifically on nest boxes or?
Well, I think she's going to
She's
send
gonna
you a
email.
question about a very specific nest box she has.
And
And I guess there's obviously there's different size nest boxes for different
Yes.
sized owls because
yes,
some of them are the size of small.
yes,
So-
yeah, especially barn owls, they have
Yeah.
huge nest boxes. I do think that deeper nest boxes are better. I am currently trying to find funding to test that, but yeah, there have been some studies on like different nest box design and stuff. Yeah. Any other questions?
Why do they call screech owls screech owls?
That's a great question. I've wondered that myself, often. I don't actually know. Maybe I'll find out tomorrow when I talk to a bunch of the screech owl biologists in the province. I have never, that's a lie. I've heard one owl screech. It was an amateur owl that I had banded and tagged when it fledged, and then I caught it again 2 months later. to check on him, and he already knew me, so he was not a fan. And that's the only time that I've ever had one screech. He was fine.
LM
Absolutely.
says the eastern screech owl screeches.
Ah, there you go.
What's that?
The eastern screech owl
Thanks,
screeches.
Leah.
Okay, there you go.
There you go.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I imagine that's what it was. It's usually like some other screech owl, and then there's 22 different screech owls. Not all of them are screeching, I'm assuming.
Maybe it was discovered by Dr. Screech.
Oh, you know,
I
that's
mean-
another possibility. Yeah, yeah.
That is a good theory. Any other questions? Yeah.
How close can you put like max boxes together? Like if you have 2 acres, can you have 3, 1, 0?
You definitely could have put as many as you want. Tanya Tripp, who has been doing Western screech owl ecology for the past like 30 years, actually recommends that you put multiple boxes close together, like between 2 and 3 meters away from each other, just so that they have, like, I find that they sometimes will use like different cavities. I found that this in like natural cavities as well, where they'll cache prey, so they'll put, you know, like dead things in various bits so that they can feed the young all at the same time, so they get quiet. Yeah, they get really loud right at dusk, and so it's really obvious to predators is like there's babies here. So you'll see the female and the male, they're just like, be quiet. So yeah, you can put them like pretty close together. Sorry, I didn't repeat that question. Yeah.
Yeah, so when the fledglings, when they're sort of fully grown, and do they disperse and they have to establish new territories, and do we have any sense of what the survival rate is?
I don't think we have I did a dispersal study in 2023. I don't think it's like a definitive number, but I think most raptors typically like probably 50% would be an overly optimistic. I had all of the 9 that I had tagged in 2023. It was 7 of them dispersed. Whether they made it to breeding season, I don't know, as the tags turned off. But yeah, they should in theory make it. I think the initial dispersal is the trickiest. I had birds that went up to 50 kilometers away from their natal territory, but the majority of them stuck within 12 kilometers, tried to establish new spots. Yeah, not too far. Yes.
The screech owls, the most common owl around, say, the central east coast?
That is a great question. The question was, are Western screech owls the most common owl on the central east coast or west coast? Yeah, no, they were potentially, you know, there are anecdotal reports of like screech owls just being dime a dozen kind of, you know, 30 years ago, you hear them everywhere. That's not the case anymore. Northern saw-whet owls are probably the most dominant. You can go at Joan Point and get like 6 of them in, you know, a pretty small area. So those are kind of the ubiquitous, you know, even though they're nocturnal and kind of cryptic, they're very common. Yeah. Great question. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of any youngsters coming back and claiming the territories of the birds?
No, but that would be amazing research to actually get. The problem is Western screech owls are like this big, and so tags that are, you know, like on burrowing owls, you can put solar tags because they hang out, you know, out where the sun is. Screech owls are forest and cryptic, and they like to have their back toward like facing the trunk, I've found. Kind of like where I had the adult and the chick, they kind of sit like that often. And so we can't use solar powered tags on them. They have to be battery. And because they're so small, that battery is not enough for us to be able to answer that question yet. But it very well could be, especially for those that stick around, you know, closer to their natal territory, they might take over. Yeah, I don't know. I imagine there's some draw to leaving. I know that there was work done in 1997 in Idaho on, there was the more dominant a chick was, which may have been sexually. I'm not sure if they actually looked at sex. I can't remember. But the more dominant a chick was, the farther it would go, and the faster it would go. So yeah, I'm not sure. That doesn't really answer your question. I don't really have an answer to your question. But yeah. Any other questions? Or screech off that.
I have one. I'm not familiar at all with solar tagging, you say?
Yes, solar tags. So like the tags that I use are battery powered. And so they have a limited capacity before they kind of burn out. The burrowing owls and other, other creatures, I guess, that are around or able to recharge the tag with the sun. So they have a little tiny solar kind of cell on them that's able to recharge the tag and then transmit locations. And for those tags, they're great because especially for, longer lived species or species that do long distance migration, you might not get the bird for, a week or two, but then they'll pop up again, on their wintering grounds. So that's why the burrowing owl folks use solar powered tags.
So does it go, is it like a band on the?
No, sorry. It's a little, I should have bring one in. They're little kind of plastic epoxy tags with the hardware, and then they've got a long antenna for transmitting. And they sit kind of like above the tail. Actually, it depends on how you attach them because there's various attachment methods. So the way I do it is just above the tail and kind of like pants looping, so it doesn't affect the flight at all. And then for other raptors, actually a lot of other raptors are tagged. That's the leg loop method. But the others is like backpack harness. So they go kind of over the wings and crisscross. They don't like impact flight either. It's just a different method. It's very often used in raptors because especially raptors that do like long distance migration. Yeah. And there's also tail mounts. These fall off, I think, pretty quickly. But you can actually epoxy glue a tag to the tail, and then that'll stay on for a few weeks and then fall off when they molt the feather.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
With that, how you detect them? With those big antennas which you
Yes.
and can you see them in cell phone or laptops also, the location?
Yes, great question. The question was, how can you track the owls? And can you see that, remotely on a laptop, or do you have to go and track the owls? So there's lots of different tagging options. One of them is very high frequency or VHF. That requires on the ground tracking. So when you saw my technician there with her antenna, that is very much you're like trying to figure out which direction. Often it's like a ham radio, so it's like beep, 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 beep. It's that way, or stronger rather. It's not faster beeps, it's just stronger beeps. So it's basically wandering around the forest waiting for, things to get louder. And all of a sudden you're on now. So that's VHF. It's very time consuming, obviously, to get like one data point. Recently, there's been lots of improvements in GPS technologies, so like satellite. So there's different, there's Modus networks where there's towers of Modus towers that are kind of working like cell phone towers where they'll pick up the bird if they're close enough. And there's also cell phone tags where they'll use cell phone networks and pick up the tag that way. And then there's also just like old-fashioned GPS gets a point from like however many satellites it can grab, and then loads the data remotely onto the satellite, and then you can just look online and see your data. So
And the last
How
one.
effective are the backpack method and other higher upper back methods given the range of motion that an owl has?
there's been some research. It's kind of variable, and I think it's very case specific. So the question was, very bad at repeating the question. The question was, how effective is the backpack method versus the leg loop method of tag attachment given the range of motion that owls have? If you're talking about like head turning, is that what you're thinking? Yeah, it doesn't really impact them because it goes kind of at the shoulders and the neck is where that movement happens. Also the material is quite thin, and so like there's different materials. Some people use Kevlar. I use like what's called Stretch Magic, which if you've ever had those really bad bracelets and they snap. The idea is that they'd snap after a year or two, they get worn. And so leg loop, I find the main thing that you want to watch out for in leg loop is that you want to make sure that they can grab, because like a raptor, their whole thing is they need to be able to kill prey. And so if they can't kill prey, then that's obviously really bad. So what I do is a grab test, which is great because I just offer my finger to the owl, and if it can grab me really hard and it hurts, I know that it's okay. Yeah, I think mostly it's like when you let the owl go, you have to make sure that it's obviously behaving and able to move, you know, full range of motion and powered flight as it's leaving. So great question.
Is there any concern for the owl being able to reach the transmitter?
Oh yeah, there's much concern of the owl reaching the transmitter and just ripping it off. I, for whatever reason, screech owls, males don't seem to do that. I've had females disappear, which I'm pretty sure they're ripping it off. I don't know if it's just that they're more aggressive and they're like, I don't need this and I'm big, so whatever. But yeah, I've had a few females rip, which is another reason why I'm just like, we won't tag them. It's fine. I've also had them, this is the other thing that they do, is clip antennas. So like they have a long antenna that comes off the bird. They'll just like clip it off at the bottom. Then you get this little nub where surprisingly I've had VHF tags still work, even though they're like that big. So yeah, it's kind of surprising. Sorry, rambling, keeping everyone up.
Oh, that's cool.
You mentioned in terms of actions we can take for conservation, and like planting native plants and all that. We also mentioned that these are public forest dwellers. How big of a forest does there need to be before a screech owl will go on? Do you know that?
That's a great question. The question is, how big does the forest have to be to support a screech owl? Great question. We don't know that. I am hoping that I'll be able to answer that after this PhD, which might take a while. But yeah, I imagine a decent amount, like the home range size of the birds that we had on Vargas were about 100 hectares. Whether they can manage with less forest, I don't know. Typically what ends up happening though with home range size is if they're in kind of fragmented or patchy landscape, they'll just have a bigger home range. So instead of having 100 hectares, they might have like 400 hectares because they need to go farther to find that forest. That's usually what ends up happening. So it doesn't mean you won't have a screech owl, it just means it might be like chaotic. They just might not be as dense. Great question.
Okay, well, we should maybe end it there. If there's other questions, you can always come up and
Yes,
ask, maybe
yeah.
hang it up.
Well,
Well, I left the microphone.
Do you want my microphone?
Oh, well, thank you very much. It's awesome. Who doesn't love owls, eh? And obviously, you know, an inspiring species to get hooked on too. We'll just have the raffle. I'm gonna ask Megan maybe to pull the winning ticket for the owl book, generously donated by Stefan.
Nobody get mad.
Drum roll, no.
Oh, okay. First of all, thank you, Megan. That was absolutely fascinating and
thank you.
Really well done.
Thanks.
And it's also so nice to see such a big group here.
Yeah.
I'm super happy. I hope some of you who came just to visit tonight might consider joining Nature Nanaimo. We have great speakers all the time and great trips. So some of you put in $2 to win this excellent book donated by Stefan. And then there's also these excellent calendars.